If you want to become a cloud architect, you must start thinking like a cloud architect and not a cloud engineer. And the reason architects must think differently is architects and engineers have a very different job and we serve very different functions in our careers. See, cloud engineers are paid to solve technical problems, but cloud architects are ultimately paid to solve business problems. And that's where most people fail. They learn all about the tech. They learn a lot about AWS, Azure, Kubernetes, Terraform, and all kinds of security tools. And then when they get in an interview, they discuss tools, they discuss services just like an engineer, and they don't get hired because architects are there for a different reason. And you have to think, act, and be very different in your interview. We architects are hired for different reasons. While cloud engineers may discuss tools or services in their job, we cloud architects are hired to answer these questions. What should the business build? Why should the business build it? And how will whatever we design create actual business value? And that takes architect thinking, not engineering thinking. So let's talk about the core difference between an engineer and an architect and the play that it will play in our thinking. I want to make it real simple. A cloud engineer focuses on execution, building the systems, tuning it, operating it. But we cloud architects focus on strategic direction. And while the cloud engineer will focus and ask and think about, how do I build this? How do I configure this or deploy this? The architect is asking a very different question. Why are we building this? What business problem will our architecture solve? What business capabilities must this architecture create? What is the business outcome that this business needs? What kind of trade-offs can we accept? And both cloud architecture and cloud engineering roles are important, but they're different roles, they have a different function, and they require a very different set of thinking. Because the cloud architect needs to be thinking about how that solution will meet the client's business goals, not how to build it. And that's what architecture thinking is about. Planning, it's about strategy and business outcomes, not technical systems or tools. So architects, as I mentioned, are hired to solve business problems. And what does that mean? It means that every architecture will be funded for a business reason. See, no executive is going to wake up and say, I really am excited about Kubernetes. The executives that will fund our architectures have a different question. They'll have a business desire like we want to launch new products faster, or we're trying to reduce our organization's risk, or we're trying to enhance the customer experience, or we want to enter a new market. And that's why cloud architecture exists and other types of architecture careers. We are there to connect the business goals to the technology strategy. The technology matters, but the technology is not the reason the architecture gets funded. The business outcome is what funds the actual architecture. And if the architecture does not improve revenue, reduce cost, reduce the organization's risk, improve time to market, improve business resilience, or customer value in some way, then why would the business fund the architecture in the first place? And that's how a cloud architect must think. Not which cloud service should we use? Well, that's part of what we use. But our bigger question is, what business result must our architectures create? So how do you actually think like a cloud architect in a meeting or an interview or a client conversation? Very simply, you just change the order of your thinking. So the cloud engineer typically thinks in this order: the tool, the design, how they'll build it, and how they'll operate it. We architects thinking very differently. We architects start with the business goal, like we'd like to enhance revenue, the business constraints, like we can only afford this much, the actual risk to the business, what capabilities the business actually needs, what trade-offs we can accept. For example, can we afford to do it? If we want stability, it might cost us speed. And architects are thinking about strategy. So it's a very different way of thinking. So let's break it down. First thing is the business goal. What's the company trying to achieve? Secondly, the constraints. What budget? What timeline? What kind of compliance is our constraint? Do we have a shortage of talent, for example? Then we get into the risks. What could fail? What could create loss? What would damage our reputation? What would an uncontrolled security exposure create for this business? What could slow the business down, for example? And then we get into the capabilities. What must the business be able to do after this architecture is in place? If they're looking to enhance sales, how is this architecture going to enhance sales? Fifth, the trade-offs. What are we optimizing for? Are we optimizing for speed? Are we optimizing for control? Are we optimizing for cost? Or are we optimizing for resilience? Are we opting for flexibility? Or are we opting for standardization? Do we want something that's cloud native in terms of speed? Or are we looking for portability later? So that's the trade-offs. Now, the sixth thing to think about is the architecture strategy. What is the target state of the enterprise and the architecture we're trying to get to? What principles are guiding our architectural design? What platforms, patterns, and guardrails do we need? And then seventh down the list is the technology choices. After we've got everything else already figured out, now we decide on which services, which platforms, or which tools to use. And notice the difference. The technology comes last for the architect, and not because the technology is not important. The technology comes last because the architect must first understand what the technology must accomplish and the actual goals we're trying to achieve. So I'll give you an example of engineering thinking versus architecture thinking to try to make it more clear for you. Let's say a company wants to modernize an old application. The engineer thinking and communication often sounds like this. We can containerize the application, deploy it on Kubernetes, use managed databases, add a CI/CD pipeline, and improve our ability to observability. That's an engineering kind of answer. And that sounds probably technically correct for a lot of clients, but it's not an architecture answer, and it's not an architecture mindset. The architecture answer is going to sound very different, and it needs to be very different. The architect is going to say, before we choose the platform, we need to understand why the application should be modernized in the first place. Then the architect will ask, is the application slowing down product releases? Is the current application creating a customer experience problem? Is the current application too expensive to scale? Is it hard to secure? Is it blocking business growth? And then the architecture will connect the ultimate solution to the actual business value that we're trying to achieve. So if the goal is faster product delivery, we may need a platform that improves deployment speed and team autonomy. If the goal is going to be risk reduction, then maybe we need stronger identity controls, more networking and cloud segmentation, better logging patterns. If the goal is cost control, we need to reduce the number of applications we have with an application rationalization program before a cloud migration. If the goal is to improve customer experience, then maybe we need better performance or higher availability or additional data integration. And that's how an architect thinks. We don't start with the coolest technology, we start with the business reason. And that's why so many technical people with a technical mindset fail in a cloud architect interview. So, here's your mindset shift. Stop saying, I know how to build the cloud solution, and start saying, I know how to design cloud strategies that solve business problems. Stop saying, I know AWS, Azure, or Kubernetes, and start saying, I know how to use cloud architecture to improve speed, reduce risk, control costs, or support business growth. Stop saying things like, I can configure the technology, and start saying things like, I can help make the business make better technology decisions. That's the language of an architect, which comes from the thinking of the architect. And that's how you become very credible with the executives. And that's also how you become very credible in your cloud architect interviews. And that's how you move from a techie, say a cloud engineer, or a non-techie into an architect role by learning how to think, act, and be a wonderful, great cloud architect. Now, if you'd like to become a cloud architect, don't just learn more cloud services. Learn how to think and act like an architect. Start with the business problem, understand the outcomes we're trying to achieve, identify the constraints, evaluate the risks, understand and make the trade-off decisions, and then choose your technology. That's how architects work, because we architects, again, are hired to solve business problems with technology. And if you would like to learn how to become an exceptional cloud architect or enterprise architect or security architect or AI architect, join us on our next free architecture career webinar. In this webinar, we will tell you the exact set of skills that you need to become an architect. We will tell you what we do as architects. We will tell you what hiring managers look for when they hire a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, what have you. We will teach you how to build the right portfolio for your architect job. And we'll even talk about the certifications and branding and resume things you need to do to get your first architect job. Now, you can register for this free architecture webinar by clicking on the link in the description of this video. That webinar will be live on Zoom, so you can ask me any questions you like, and I hope to meet you there. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your cloud architect career, enterprise architect career, security architect career, or AI architect career. Take care, everyone, and hope to see you soon.